we put up there. I think it was either Wyndham Iyason or maybe it was Yifty. But there was a meme that was put up. I had suggested to some of the brothers that do some of the art, like Zawadi and even Yifty, as well as Iyason. Let's do a meme of what the second president of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser, had said when he said that the reason why that region of the world, that biblical and ancient Afro-Asiatic region of the world, does not accept the so-called white Jews or Ashkenazi Jews, is that when the Jews left, they were black. Now they come back and they're white. And so I had a couple of pictures, right, where His Majesty, right, where the Lion of the tribe of Judah is sitting down with the second president of modern Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser. And they were kind of like, discussing. The one I have on the screen right now is one that the Brethren had found. There's another one where they're kind of like at a desk and they're kind of smiling and reasoning with each other. And when I saw the picture, I was like, why don't we do a meme? The meme, like where we put some caption on it? Put some caption on the picture. I thought to kind of share that astounding statement and recognition that the Jews, the real Jews, Jews of the Bible, Ethiopian Hebrews, are black people. And that's not something that we're making up now, that those prophetic leaders, right, the King of Kings, right, and his real brethren, right, or the real, we could say the good Ishmaelites, like Gamal Abdel Nasser, they recognize that from such a time. Now, connected with what you're saying, since we're actually on the record right now, try to scroll it, rewind it a little bit, from what you had said on the show, and share this with the people, brothers and sisters and others that will get a hearing of this regarding Haile Selassie, some of the new and recent information that backs up on RasTafari over Illuminati, additional research, and also your second book. So try to bring that out again about Haile Selassie, the Lion of Judah, and the Jews. How about that one right there?
Well, like I said, is that I stumbled upon something yesterday in my Google research, and it was a book, I think, that's out about Israel and Haile Selassie, and they mentioned about how two things I found interesting. One was that the Falashas, who are the Ethiopian Jews, the real name is the Pt1, Haile Selassie was going to actually give them land in Ethiopia and say that they belong in Ethiopia because they're Ethiopian, even though they are that Hebrews and practice Judaism and stuff like that, and that he felt that they didn't need to go to Israel and all of these things. So His Majesty wanted them to stay because they were Ethiopians and he was giving them land. And that kind of breaks another myth that once had perpetrated against Abba, is that he discriminated against the black Jews, the Judaism. And His Majesty was going to give them land just for them, strictly for them. And one thing that happened after the Dallas creeping coup was that the Derg made a deal with Israel. There was a lot of Israeli intelligence in Ethiopia, and the Derg was a power to get ports in the Red Sea, so that they have a strong position in their day-to-day Israelis, and in turn, the Derg shipped all of its Jews to Israel. And another thing, because I finally found the speeches. Now, in 1973, I found this is also in my research, is that at OAU, this is the head of the OAU, this is from the communique from the Ethiopian government regarding the Middle East, October 27, 1973, in its states. Consistent with their stand on opposing territory annexation, Ethiopia has done their best to effect the withdrawal of Israel from the territories of Egypt, Jordan, occupied in 1967. Because Israel has failed to withdraw from the occupied territory, Ethiopia decided to sever diplomatic relations with Israel until such time as Israel withdraws from the occupied territory. And I'm trying to find something else here. That's actually from Haile Selassie.
That's interesting. You mentioned that there's a document that I have had scanned, and if it hasn't been put forward on RTG, it will be soon. I don't know if the magazine is around, if that particular magazine is around. If it is, and someone here can find a copy of that one, the Ethiopian magazine, if it's available, if the eye knows, if not. Anyway, in that same one, someone named Ehrlich, somebody by the name of Ehrlich was writing in this, I think it's Ethiopia Times. And it's one of the periodicals back in the 90s. I used to go up to, the United Nations and the Ethiopian consulate and, to some of the different Ethiopian communities, scouting, seeing as a RasTafari scout, what's what. And I would come across like even some of the Ethiopian magazines in Amharic or English or whatnot. And even though my Amharic was not that strong then, I still grabbed that because I recognize that maybe a blameless Ethiopian, a good Ethiopian would help me, or that Jah will continue to grow me in the knowledge of it. But some of the magazines were in English, and this one was in English. It had some Amharic articles, but the majority was in English. This one was about Ethiopia and Israel. And one of the captions, I think I shared this with the eye before, but one of the captions was also talking about the 6-day war, the Yom Kippur War and the 6-day war, and how Ethiopia, or rather Imperial Ethiopia, Davidic Ethiopia, Kingdom of David, Ethiopia had severed, I think, diplomatic relations with the state of Israel, or rather with the state of Jezreel, or what they call Israel, right? Which has already demonstrated a lot of, and this is so ironic because we know the majority of those who are running that operation over there, right? That legal operation over there are so-called Ashkenazi, Ashkenazi Jews, and, Nazis on the end of it. They might say it had nothing to do with the Nazis because they suffered by the Nazi, but we know that a lot of that was like, black on black violence. A lot of that was Jew on Jew violence. Because often we think a group is monolithic, and within a group, it's usually those of your own group. I mean, who betrayed, Yeshua? Jesus Christos, Getachin. It was Iscariot. It was one of that group.
Who betrayed Haile Selassie?
Yeah, a lot of Ethiopian Iscariots in the same sense. But this point about the state of Israel and the position of Haile Selassie has not really been brought out. Like, for example, a lot of, the Saul black Israelites, or the black Saul Israelites. I call them the Saul Israelites because they haven't become Paul yet. They haven't, been converted. They're still blind and everything. But a lot of the black Jews and black Jews and Hebrew Israelites will quote what Gamal Abdel Nasser said, but then they will spread lies and slander on the king. They will spread the COINTELPRO talking points. That's what it is. It's the COINTELPRO talking points against the King of Kings. Yet when you know the true picture of it, and you recognize, well, Gamal Abdel Nasser said when the Jews left, they were black. Now they come back and you're white, or they're white. And this is one of the reasons why we can't accept the so-called state of Israel, right? The LOL, the laughing out loud point is, who was he in close relationship with? You know what I mean? So here we have Judah, Israel, the true Israel, the Israel of David, and we have true Ishmaelites.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we have that all in the Abrahamic, Abraham, the black Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob family. Now, what is the reasons why Haile Selassie made those particular strategic moves? I was reasoning with one of our Ethiopian sisters, whose family is, I know she's part of the aristocracy, but she's humble. She don't want any of those big titles, but they're part of, you could say, the Davidic establishment of Ethiopia. Right? And so they know some inside stuff, some inside stories. You know what I'm saying? And one of them that has been circulating is that Haile Selassie made a wrong move. Some of the careless Ethiopians think that he made a wrong move in not voting for Israel back in the 1940s because Ethiopia abstained. So they figure that he made a wrong move in abstaining. Now, the key question is this: why did Ethiopia abstain? And then to the naysayers who tried to associate, His Majesty with the wicked, and say, well, he was down with them. Well, why would he abstain? It makes more sense. You know what I mean? Like if he was a so-called puppet or a tool, that he would have gone along with that. It doesn't make no big sense. It's just Israel, right? Unless there is a bigger picture. And the bigger picture was the state of the so-called black Jews of Harlem and the black Jews in the Americas and the Caribbean, right? Those of black Israel, Hebrew, so-called Negroes, Hispanic, and Native Americans over in this region, but namely the so-called Negro, the African American so-called Negro, many of them who were waking up, who had awoken to their true identity. And this is where we have that link with the rabbis, Arnold Josiah Ford, who him and Burrow wrote the Ethiopia anthem of Marcus Garvey's organization. Then we have the Commandment Keepers. So we have a movement of black Israel, Beta Israel consciousness among the lost Judahite tribes in the Americas and the Caribbean, Benjamin and RasTafari. RasTafari is also an Israelitish movement from the very beginning. The first thing that the elders said is that we are the Israelites, that black people are the Israelites. We didn't wait for these niggas on the street, these street corner Israelites to come along and say this. But see, it's COINTELPRO once again.
Yeah,
it's
the early Rastafari elders were really like the four evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because they knew the Bible, and they knew, like in my book, they knew the coded message of the Bible before anybody even used the term Babylon. I mean, nobody, now you see even among the so-called white conspiracy theorists. Yeah,
everybody says Babylon now. Now everybody knows it's Babylon. Like now they know that there is a medicinal use of so-called marijuana. You know what I mean? Now they know of cannabis. You know what I mean? And it only is when, and you can see how selfish, how devil possess the world flesh, is, because it's only when these same people who fight against everything that we preach, when they try all their strategies, then they recognize the truth. But there's still this truth concerning black Israel and the state of Israel, and this is why it's so interesting. Another point you brought up about the protests of the Africans. See, that's another thing. They call the blacks, or the so-called black people over in the state of Israel, they call them African migrants. But you know what? Many of them identify themselves as Hebrews and as Jews and as Israelites.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? Not all of them, you know what I mean? But many of them, just like when Israel came out in the Torah, there was a mixed multitude. There's people who would ride the bandwagon because they like the music or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Or they just recognize it's better to be with the children of Jah, Rastafari, than to be with the children of the wicked. So not all of them are, but many of them, many of them are. So when the media spins it, they make us think that, it's all these blacks coming over for a Happy Meal or something like that. And some fries and a shake or something like that. But many of them are coming over there to support, that ingathering that they believe is the true Zion or is the true Jerusalem.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah, that would make sense.
And the only reason why the European Jews finally right? Finally, so-called. But see, they did this, what they did when they, Operation Solomon and Operation Moses. The only reason why they did this is because at that time, right, there was big fire globally, internationally, about the racism, the overt racism of the Jews who call themselves Jews, and had everybody's sympathy about the so-called 6 million in the Holocaust.
The Holocaust, right.
But then they're seeing these people being Nazis, right? To, on one hand, the so-called Philistines or Palestinians.
Jews did not be doing the same thing. They're doing what the Nazis did in Kristallnacht in Germany, when they're kicking doors and breaking in.
And let's not forget this one, not to cut the eye, beloved, but let's not forget this one. How about the eugenics program? How about the sterilization? I mean, the sterilization of all of the, all the Ethiopian, Jewish and black Hebrew women over there. This is the same thing that they was doing to the Jews, the so-called Negroes over in the Americas and the Tuskegee experiment. And who knows what happened to all the Katrina victims? You see, even when Auschwitz and the so-called genocide was going on over there against the real religious Jews, really what they was killing off was the people who believed in the Torah, and a lot of other mixed people, and even a lot of black people over there they were killing off over there and everything. But while that was going on, people in Germany didn't even know. So it's like, but from what I've been hearing, from what reports has been, coming in and out there, who knows what has happened to a lot of the missing black people in America?
Right.
Like in Katrina. So.
Oh, you mean like the people losing organs and stuff?
I mean, yeah, the organs and what about all those people in Katrina? Where did they all end up? We know they didn't return. Many of them could not return to New Orleans.
I don't mean to cut there, but I got a documentary that talks about this called Prisoners of Katrina that BBC did.
Word?
And I forgot one by Francis Chris Wilson on Katrina that, because I said I listed things I wanted. I know you have my list, but I had these, and it's funny you mentioned that because I just saw them the other day.
Hey.
Katrina, I know.
Hey, it's time to get some information out there. And if you have copies of those and, can work with ones-on-ones who need copies, definitely put that out there because, my point basically, because there's a lot of different lines of, there's a lot of different, how can I say, paper trails and evidence trails. There's a lot of different, cascade subtitles. Right? But let's just return it to the main point. The main point why Haile Selassie, and this is what I told to I and I sister Wazero Lishan, Sister Lishan. You probably know her. She has a website, on the YouTube. Some very good, vids and everything else. But this is what I told her. I said, her dibs was this, that it was an Eritrean, ambassador or something that many Ethiopians believe His Majesty made the wrong move. Not many, but certain Ethiopians, uncertain ones believe this because he was misadvised by a so-called Eritrean, advisor. Now, from our experience, really in the depths of the belly of the beast, we know that's just a lot of part of COINTELPRO, because they already have their issues, Ethiopian versus Eritrean. You know what I'm saying? So if anything goes wrong, you can just find, who is the unalike or who is the Jews and Samaritan. The whole Ethiopia Eritrean thing is nothing but the biblical, Jews and Samaritan, those in the north versus those in the south. And you'll find that over and over and over. It's a template there. But I told her that the real reason that a lot of Ethiopians don't even recognize because they're looking at themselves being a little overly selfish, right, is the black Jews, right, or the Ethiopian and the Hebrews in the Americas and the Caribbean. What was their part within this reestablishment of the state of Israel? Because before the so-called white Jews had focused on that particular land, they were focusing on Rwanda. They were focusing on parts of Uganda too. Oh, in Uganda. Why were they focusing on Africa? And they.
I've read that too. That Uganda, because there's an ancient, tribes that they claim were biblical, but also it's because of the resources too.
Well, it's also because of the resources, but then another important point, and this is what I was trying to do in Black Israel in a couple of the videos that was named Black Israel's Real Estate, that I put up recently, is when you look at the fullness of the promised land, according to what was promised to Father Abraham, it's from the river, the eastern side of Africa. The river, and it was in John's mind, it's not just that little beachfront property, but it's Arabia, right? North and south, all the way to the river of Euphrates that leads into Babylon, going to the east, and then coming to the west, it's to Africa, the eastern seaboard of Africa, from the top of Egypt all the way down to some of the headwaters that we find down in South Africa. And that is why you find some of the oldest Hebrew and Black or African, if you want to say for now, Jewish communities.
The Limba tribe.
And the Beta Israel of Ethiopia. So it was a strategic move of the state of Israel. Right. It was a strategic move of the state of Israel to bring in those blackies. Because after all, right, every white supremacy needs some Negroes, needs some niggas there. If you understand the pyramidical system, you need somebody on the bottom. You know what I'm saying? And the reason why a lot of here's what the book by Dr. Ben is good. What's it called? The Black Jews?
Yes.
Yeah. That book is a very important book for one reason. Now, Dr. Ben has his own, he has his own political opinion about this and that, and you see it sometimes. But he provides so much historical information of what is going on. He has his interpretation of a lot of the information, and he puts that in his book. But a lot of the information have additional usages, and I haven't seen this information about the movement of so-called Black Jewish peoples in the Americas and the Caribbean, as he documents in his book, going all the way to the 1920s and even before, but namely in connection with the King of Kings, right, from about roughly 1916, 1914, going to like 1930, there was a lot of underground Black Hebrew, Ethiopian Hebrew, Black Jewish connection. And it was us that was looking at that land, right? It was Black people, Ethiopian Hebrews, that were looking at that land. And when the king had come to the throne, that was an ideal opportunity to really bring it together. But at the same time, the white Jews were still fumbling over a lot of stuff. So what happened was that the Rothschilds, the whole Rothschild, their bankers, their own Judas Iscariot Jews, the Rothschilds, had already twisted arms in England, and had compromised certain British officials. But see, a lot of the religious white Jews didn't want anything to do with the Rothschild Jews. It's like a lot of the Black Hebrews don't want anything to do with none of those boule niggas. Exactly. But what happened was that some within their movement sold out, made compromises. And that state of Israel was guided basically through the Jews who call themselves Jews, namely the Rothschild family, and a lot of the other religious Jews, were hoodwinked and bamboozled and went along with it. Because they figured, well, you know what? By hook or by crook, His Majesty was not going to co-sign. The Lion of the tribe of Judah, Haile Selassie I, the elect of God, King of Kings of Ethiopia upon the throne of David, was not going to co-sign to that. And that is the reason why, plus the issue of what would become, of Black people, of Black Jews, of the real Jews. because they didn't have no idea. They didn't have no conception. You have to remember what time that was in the 1920s and 30s. Come on, let's not forget. See, we think it's like today where everybody's playing kumbaya and, you know, doing an interracial thing or whatever else like that. And that's all right if it's real. You understand? But that, you can't use what's happening today to understand what happened yesterday. And then on top of that, His Majesty understood the prophecy. You see, the tribe of Dan is Phalasha. The tribe of Dan does not appear in the sum of the 12 tribes of Israel. You got to ask yourself, why is that? In a sense, there's even a lot of black Jews, or rather, they don't call them Jews, but they call themselves black Hebrews, and a lot of like the GOCC and a lot of these other camps and communities who are all about going to the state of Israel. Is that on our agenda? That's not on the true agenda, the true prophetic time scale. He said he prepared a place for us, right? And that place he's prepared for us, of course, we know is the new or the second Jerusalem or the second Zion, which is Ethiopia. But see, the Phalashas, let's just talk about the Beta Israel for a moment of Ethiopia. They have been persecuted in some senses, and they also have been persecutors historically of certain Ethiopian Hebrews who decided to be Christian and step up from Judaism. Because a lot of the Ethiopian Christians before come from families who were Ethiopian Jews. Some Jews stayed behind. Some did not convert to, or accept the Moshiach in the person of Yeshua. Didn't accept, the Messiah in the person of Jesus Christos. So there was a split in that ancient community from like Solomon and Sheba time and other migrations to Ethiopia, because that was a refuge. That was like a place of refuge, right? Now, during the time of Zara Yaakov, the former, not the present Zara Yaakov, but the ancient Zara Yaakov, a lot of Beta Israel were forced because of a lot of the tensions, and a lot of the Jesuits were bringing in the European hate the Jews kind of thing. And a lot of the Ethiopian rulers already had their differences with some of their own black Jews. So as they started to palsy-wowsy, with some of the Europeans were bringing in, you got to kill these Jews, you got to persecute them. And some of the people went for that. And they did persecute, and they did take lands from the Beta Israel communities in Ethiopia. This already happened historically long before the coming of His Majesty and the birth of RasTafari. You know what I'm saying? So when you connected that His Majesty was going to give them land, he was going to return to them the lands that certain former Davidic rulers, right, and Christian rulers, messianic rulers on the kingdom of the King of Kings, on the throne of David, had taken from them. You see, but by that time, they already were really being, how can you say, spoiled by all the promises. And you have to remember that attention that the white folks, the white Jews, and like Halevi and some of the other ones, all that attention that they were giving them too. Right. You see what I'm saying? And you have to remember that in their cultural position, they were feeling like, they were really feeling like Phalasha, because Phalasha means exile. See, the name Phalasha was a name that was given to them or forced on them when they were forced to convert by certain Ethiopian kings, right? Forced them to convert. And when they didn't convert, they was told, or the land was taken from them. And I find this to be a wrong thing that certain Ethiopian Christians did to their Ethiopian Jewish brothers. And because I support the throne of the King of Kings, doesn't mean I support those who came before him, right, and did these wicked things. So a lot of that falls on Haile Selassie because he represents that authority. that Davidic kingdom authority. So a lot of the Philoshes, a lot of the Beta Israel. In fact, they don't like that name because that name basically says that your land was taken from you. But now what the European Jews have said, listen, you got new land over here. And that's what the Bible is talking about. You see what I'm saying? And what they don't recognize is that that is their land, as well as Ethiopia is their land. If you look at Genesis chapter 15, right, verses 18 to, I think, that whole section there. And if you go get a good map, that's their land as well. So what we're speaking about is the two Zions, right? The Zion of the old covenant and the Zion of the new covenant, which is Ethiopia. And that is in the promised land given to Abraham's seed. So they've been.
I mean to cut that, but in my new book, I don't know if you see it, but I kind of get into that through using the covering August in the Bible, that God, from the beginning, was preparing Ethiopia for this position.
I mean, like I said, when you go to Genesis chapter 15, right? So you see what a lot of folks get confused is that in Exodus, right? In Exodus, a land grant was given to the tribes that were crossing the Jordan River. There was a land grant that was a smaller piece. It was like a trial. It was like a trial run. So a lot of Jews or Hebrews and others, they fall in that trap that what the Israelites, the land that was allotted to the Israelites on coming out from Egypt is the limitation of the land that has been given to us now. And they're forgetting that promise that was made to our ancestor, Black Abraham, right? You know what I'm saying?
I agree. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Because a lot of folks think that when we have Passover, that we are saying, blessed be the Lord God who led us out of Egypt. Jeremiah says, no. Jeremiah chapter 23. He says, no longer shall we say that, but blessed be the Lord God who led us out of the north country, North America, right? And from all the other lands where he scattered us, he's bringing us into that fullness that he promised to Abraham when a generation was worthy to be called the seed, that seed people. You know what I mean? Because the word is a seed. You see what I'm saying? But a lot of people have been deceived. You know what I'm saying? But the point about His Majesty and the Jews and the line of the tribe of Judah and the state of Israel, black and white Jews, he recognized better than anyone that it was a trap. Right. But since a lot of the black Hebrews over here and the Ethiopian Hebrews already also made a connection there as well, and some had went over there, that was the reason why he recognized it. See, people think he recognized it because of white folks. No, it's like Bob Marley said. He will always be close with the peoples over here, so-called America and the West, because so many of his people are over here. So-called Negroes, so-called Hispanics, and so-called Native American peoples, right, are over here.
They saw who he really was. They knew who he was. I mean, it's like Adam Clayton Powell even said that. You're the reason why we said our prayers to.
Well, actually he said, you're the symbol around which we place our prayers. Yeah. Because the symbol is that covenant of great King David, right? And great King David, so we say the greater son, because it said that Jah would perform a sign where it would be the tabernacle of David. That would be raised again, and a king would reign in a certain time. And when you look at that prophecy is right before the end. People think that's the end, but there would be a sign where he would cut in, where he would shorten those days. Right? Because if he didn't shorten those days, the deception was so strong that even the very elect might be tempted out of the way. Right? That's why this meme right here about when the Jews left, they were black. Now they come back and they're white. Now His Majesty could have said that, but it's more appropriate. You know what I mean? That his Ace Boone Coon, in other words, a real true Ishmaelite like Gamal Abdul Nasser would say that. But then after these things really came full of fronts, you see where the synagogue of Satan took its attack, right? And was only able to get away with that attack because of divide and conquer between the Ethiopians at home and abroad, the Ethiopian Hebrews. You see what I'm saying? Because that's the gate. That's the gate. Not just Ethiopia, but that identification with Ethiopia. This is why COINTELPRO tried to get a lot of these black Hebrews and Hebrew Israelites to deny Ethiopia. You see what I'm saying? To deny that connection, to deny these facts, and instead to spout a lot of the COINTEL talking points against Haile Selassie. They tried that, he don't recognize he's black. You remember that one years ago?
Oh, yeah. Just when you're talking, they emailed me and asked me and was telling me that, like, some of her black American friends, because she's conscious, she's not a Rasta, but she loves Haile Selassie. She's here in America, and some of her black American friends are telling her Haile Selassie didn't like black people and stuff. And she goes to me, now you know why we're in the miserable state condition you're in. And I said, yeah, I can see why.
Well, that's why they're in it. But remember, there's a way out. He shows us the way out of this. You see what I'm saying? Because now we're just making these links again. You know what I mean? Like in your research, you're finding these things and others are finding things, but this has to be shared with others because there's still so many of our people.
That's what I do. And it's like last night somebody was arguing, in fact last night somebody was saying that like Haile Selassie copped out to Israel and to the British and all these things, and I said, well, show me proof. And I even quoted all the things of His Majesty refuting, but it is to do with I like Leonard Howell's teachings at the Gong. He was trying to change his topic and stuff like that. It's I don't know what people.
What it is, it's what Bob said. And not to cut you, bro, but it's what Bob said. They don't want to put in the work. They don't want to put in the work. They want to sit on the sidelines and talk. You see what I'm saying? If the king says go east, what should we do? These people say, I don't want to really go east. They prefer the comfy life, the easy breezy life, the filthy lucrative life